Iran is facing its worst water crisis in decades, with officials warning the country's capital, Tehran, may soon be uninhabitable if drought conditions continue.
Lake Urmia, the world's second biggest saltwater lake, could be completely dry by the end of this summer.
Now, water levels at dam reservoirs supplying Iran's northeastern city of Mashhad have plunged now below 3%. The country continuing to suffer from severe water shortages.
Iran is collapsing from within, and it's not from sanctions, not from conflict, but from the absence of the substance that makes civilization possible. Right now, Tehran's 5 main reservoirs are at approximately 5% of their reserve capacity. Not 5% below normal, 5% total. The Lar Dam, one of Tehran's vital water sources, sits at just 1%. The Lachyan Dam is only about 9% full. The Amir Kabir Dam operates at around 8% capacity. Satellite imagery confirms what Iranian officials can no longer hide. Key dams in at least 10 provinces have dropped below 15% capacity. Nationally, inflow to dam reservoirs was down 28% in 2025 compared to the previous year. And while the reservoirs empty, President Masoud Pezeshkian stood before cameras in November 2025 and delivered a warning never before issued by an Iranian leader. If no rain arrives, Tehran's 10 million residents may need to be evacuated. Not rationed, not restricted, evacuated. The capital of a nation of over 90 million people facing what hydrologists are calling water bankruptcy, the point where natural systems have been so thoroughly depleted they cannot recover. Before we break down exactly which cities are running dry, why Iran lost 210 cubic kilometers of groundwater in 2 decades, what happens when you pump 1 million illegal wells into aquifers that won't refill, and why the regime's desperate escape plan requires spending potentially $100 billion to relocate the capital while 19 provinces face severe drought. Make sure you subscribe. Because what is happening to Iran right now is not a water shortage. It is the systematic destruction of the hydrological foundation an entire nation stands on. First, understand the numbers that satellite data and reservoir measurements have revealed about Iran's water catastrophe, because the scale is existential. The 2024-25 water year has been described as one of the most challenging in Iran's history, with average rainfall about 45% below normal. 19 provinces are in significant drought. Hormozgan in the south reported a 77% decrease in rainfall, and Sistan-Baluchistan a 72% drop. Tehran is now in its 6th consecutive year of drought, unprecedented in modern records, as historically 2 dry years were followed by a wet year. Rainfall in the capital for 2024-25 was 42% below the long-term average. In early 2025, Tehran's 5 main reservoirs held only approximately 13% of their capacity. By November, the main reservoirs supplying the city were only around 11% full. 1/3 of the water entering Tehran's supply systems is lost to leaks and theft before reaching consumers. Beyond Tehran, Mashhad, Iran's second-largest city with around 3 million people, has reservoir levels at only around 3%. The Dusti Dam, Mashhad's main reservoir, fell to essentially zero usable water in 2023, holding only 144 million cubic meters, of which 100 million was dead storage below the outlet level. By May 2025, storage in all Khorasan Razavi reservoirs was only 12% of capacity on average, and the projections show no recovery. According to some estimates, up to 50 million Iranians could be forced to migrate due to water scarcity in coming decades as climate change exacerbates shortages. The surface water crisis is catastrophic, but underground, the situation is irreversible. In the past 40 years, Iranians have sunk more than 1 million wells fitted with powerful pumps to irrigate arid farmland. The result has been rampant overpumping of aquifers that once held copious amounts of water. Experts estimate a loss of more than 210 cubic kilometers, 50 cubic miles, of stored groundwater in the first 2 decades of this century. A recent international study of 1,700 underground water reserves in 40 countries found that 32 of the world's 50 most overpumped aquifers are in Iran. 32, in one country. Over 70% of Iran's major aquifers are considered overdrawn. The Tehran Aquifer, a groundwater reserve the capital shares with surrounding farmers, is irretrievably losing 101 million cubic meters annually. Chronic overexploitation, exacerbated by widespread illegal wells, is rapidly depleting this collective resource. According to the World Resources Institute, Iran ranks among the most water-stressed countries in the world, falling under the extremely high category where 80% to 100% of renewable water resources are withdrawn annually. Iran is utilizing nearly all of its available water supply, leaving no buffer for drought. This is not drought. This is structural collapse of the water system itself. Here is where the story becomes almost incomprehensible in its cruel irony. Iran pioneered sustainable water management millennia ago. The Qanat system, ancient underground tunnels that sustainably tapped groundwater, was once the envy of the arid world. For centuries, these engineering marvels provided stable water supplies without depleting aquifers. Then Iran abandoned them. During the past several decades, the country abandoned and replaced the Qanat with wells, aquifers, and other modern systems that were less efficient or environmentally friendly. Tens of thousands of ancient Qanats were destroyed or abandoned. The replacement. Iran became one of the top 3 dam builders in the world in the late 20th century. Dozens were built on rivers too small to sustain them. Rather than fixing shortages, the reservoirs increased the loss of water due to evaporation from their large surface areas, while lowering river flows downstream and drying up wetlands and underground water reserves. Post-revolution governments, often through the construction arm of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, built hundreds of dams and wells, over-interfering with rivers, while many reservoirs sat partially empty. The third dimension of this crisis, and the one that makes reform politically impossible, is that the regime's survival depends on the very policies destroying the water supply. Iran spends 90% of its water on agriculture, which only accounts for about 12% of Iran's GDP and about 14% of employment. The Islamic Republic heavily subsidizes agricultural water use, driven by a sovereign imperative to ensure national food security. National food self-sufficiency is enshrined in the Constitution, Article 43(9), and is seen as a strategy to withstand sanctions. Subsidized water pricing and low-cost energy encouraged excessive irrigation, depleting rivers and aquifers. In 2024, urban consumers paid only 52% of the actual costs for receiving their water, starving utilities of resources to maintain supply networks while encouraging overconsumption. The licensing of hundreds of thousands of wells, many lacking proper oversight, has accelerated groundwater extraction far beyond natural replenishment rates. Political factors, including subsidies and corruption associated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, have compounded the crisis. Reform would undercut the regime's political economy. Efforts to combat the water mafia, particularly the excessive water usage of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' Khatam al-Anbiya construction headquarters, would undercut a key revenue stream for the security apparatus. Increasing water and electricity prices to rationalize consumption would risk sparking public unrest. The protests have already begun. The crisis contributed to several large protests, including some in Isfahan and Khuzestan in 2018, 2021, and 2025, that were specifically triggered by water scarcity. The 2025 Iran water crisis protests began with student-led demonstrations in May, continuing into July and August with slogans, "Water, electricity, life, our basic right." What began as protests over basic necessities rapidly evolved into broader demands for systemic change and the end of theocratic rule. Let's state the compound crisis plainly. Iran sits at the intersection of 6 simultaneous catastrophes converging on the same hydrological system. The surface water is gone, reservoirs at 5% capacity, dams on rivers too small to sustain them. Lake Urmia in northwest Iran, once one of the world's largest salt lakes, has largely dried up, leaving behind vast salt flats. The groundwater is depleted. 32 of the world's 50 most overpumped aquifers are in Iran. 210 cubic kilometers of storage lost in 20 years, aquifers compacting irreversibly under the weight of extraction. The climate is intensifying. In today's climate, which has warmed by 1.3 degrees Celsius, the severity of Iran's 5-year drought would only be expected to occur 2 to 3 times per century in a cooler world. Climate change increased the intensity from classification normal conditions to extreme and exceptional drought. The infrastructure is failing. Aging century-old water infrastructure contributes to significant leakage. 30% of treated drinking water is lost through old leaky distribution systems, with very little water recycling. The policy is trapped. Constitutional mandates for agricultural self-sufficiency, IRGC control of water resources, subsidies that encourage waste, all politically untouchable reforms. And the population blames the regime. A survey conducted in September 2025 found that 75% of Iranians blame the water crisis on domestic mismanagement and inefficiency, while only 14% attribute it to natural factors. The government blames the current crisis on changing climate, but the dramatic water security issues of Iran are rooted in decades of disintegrated planning and managerial myopia, says Keva Madani, former deputy head of Iran's Environment Department, and now director of the United Nations University's Institute of Water, Environment, and Health. I don't call it a crisis anymore. This is a state of failure, Madani said. That's why for years I've referred to it as water bankruptcy. A crisis is a state that you can mitigate. You can go back to normal at some point. But the damages we are seeing to the ecosystem, to the nature, and even to many parts of the economy and infrastructure are irreversible. The country now faces a choice between impossible options. President Pezeshkian has revived a long-debated plan to move the capital. The sparsely populated Makran region in the country's southeast, along the Gulf of Oman, has been mentioned as a potential option. The estimated cost, potentially $100 billion. Critics say the region around Makran is underdeveloped, exposed to security risks, and far from ready to host a national capital, with some arguing that such a move would be impossible because of high inflation and the sanctions imposed on Iran. Whether relocating the political capital could meaningfully reduce the city's population, and hence the water demand, is highly doubtful. Meanwhile, other major Iranian cities are facing similar water stresses, highlighting the fact that this is a nationwide threat. In the short term, water rationing has been imposed on some neighborhoods. In 2025, the government announced 12-hour water cutoffs for the top 5% high-use households who ignore warnings. Energy Minister Abbas Ali-Abadi warned that the government may have to resort to cutting water off completely on some nights. Authorities have urged people to buy water storage tanks. Iran is using cloud seeding technology in the hope of boosting rainfall, though it requires existing clouds to work. Rows of worshippers, some with their faces raised toward the sky, prayed for rain at a mosque in Tehran. None of it addresses the root cause. None of it reverses the depletion. None of it restores the 210 cubic kilometers of groundwater already lost. In July 2025, Dr. Banafsheh Zerai, a professor of water resources management at the University of Tehran, warned of an apocalyptic scenario in the water sector, stating that only 2 to 3 weeks remained to prevent the final disaster of a nationwide drinking water shortage. Iran's water crisis is not approaching. It has arrived. The reservoirs are at 5%. The aquifers won't refill. The infrastructure leaks 1/3 of what enters it. The climate is intensifying. The policies can't change without threatening regime survival. And 50 million people may soon be forced to migrate from regions where water no longer exists. The engineering that replaced the qanats has failed. The dams built on rivers too small have emptied. The million wells punched into aquifers have drained them dry. And the regime that built this system cannot dismantle it without dismantling itself. Iran is now in water bankruptcy, extracting from its rivers, lakes, and wetlands, its checking account, and its underground aquifers, its savings account, at rates that mathematically guarantee collapse. Stay tuned.